And then she said, "What do you say?" Hey everybody, I'm Amber, a disabled gal, here to reveal or remind you that you're complete in Jesus Christ alone. One day in elementary school, I was riding up this stair lift. It was the kind where you drive your wheelchair right onto this platform and then the lift kind of follows the railing, and takes you upstairs. This school did not have an elevator, but I was still able to get upstairs just very slowly. It probably took about 5 to 10 minutes to get upstairs. Now, when I was in school, I had a one-on-one, what you would call support worker, although back then she was just called my aide. As I was going up the stairs and she was walking along next to me, I told her, when we get upstairs, I need a certain book put in or out of my backpack. I can't remember, but I just told her I need it. And then she said, "What do you say?" I said, I need my book put in my backpack. And then she said, "You should ask it in the form of a question and say please and thank you." Now, instead of this being a lesson on basic manners, as I'm sure that was her intention, I more took it as, oh, so I need to beg for things that other kids don't have to beg for. Now, of course, I thought it would be disrespectful to express this, so I just kind of kept that to myself. But that was the lesson that I took away from this interaction, and this was one of those childhood moments that really chipped away at my self-worth. This video, it may sound like I'm being harsh on caregivers, but just know that's not my intention at all. I'm simply here to have a discussion about how this particular behavior has had quite a negative effect on me, and I know I'm not alone in this. I've heard plenty of other disabled individuals say the same type of sentiments. Also, if you are a former caregiver of mine, please do not take this video as an attack. We all do things, and sometimes we don't think about how that could affect the other person, and we always have the opportunity to learn and grow. Additionally, this video isn't about any specific caregiver, rather it's just talking about this behavior. And of course, you are free to disagree with me if you wish. To put it bluntly, I would not be alive without caregivers. I fully believe that caregivers deserve respect and compassion for their efforts. I also believe that disabled people and non-disabled people alike should show appreciation to the impactful people in their lives. Of course, I think it is so important to talk about the mental health of caregivers and for them to receive support when they need it, or even just ongoing when they don't think they need it. However, at the same time, I think it's dangerous to totally ignore the mental health of the person that's being cared for. I think many people have this idea in their head that disabled people have such an easy life because we quote unquote get everything done for us, so we don't really have anything that's stressful. I want to give some examples of some stressors that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. There's the frustration of being constantly reminded that there are certain things that you just cannot do independently. That one, I think, is particularly stressful for children or newly disabled adults. Another one is having to wait for help and thus feeling like you don't have the freedom that everybody else has. Having to be pulled and tugged on in every direction for dressing, showering, etc. Needing to use medical devices that are either not pleasant to use or that you feel shame for using. Constantly having to explain every detail of how and what you need. For example, just to get in a comfortable position in bed or in your wheelchair, it can take 10 plus minutes, and you might still not even be fully comfortable. Always having to interact with people and never really having the opportunity to have significant alone time because eventually you're going to need help with something. Having to constantly act like an HR department, managing caregivers, people forcibly helping you when you don't want help, or they won't help you when you do want help, constantly trying to get doctor's offices, insurance companies, and durable medical equipment companies on the same page so that you can actually get what you need. Oh, and most of all, feeling like a burden, of course. That's just scratching the surface of the potential stressors in a disabled person's life. Unlike a caregiver, it's impossible for us to have days off or respite. We deal with these things, or at least some of these things, every single day of our lives. There are no days off. Having all these stressors is already psychologically distressing enough by itself. Having to practically beg for help for our basic human needs only adds to that stress. So if you are a caregiver, please be a blessing and not a curse. In a caregiving relationship, there should be clear, respectful communication to ensure that the caregiver feels valued, but at the same time that the person being cared for doesn't feel small, humiliated, or even worse, neglected. And if the person with a disability is a child, the caregiver needs to understand that they don't have the emotional maturity of an adult. So they might not be able to communicate all those needs that you have to feel valued. In that context, the adult has to assume more of that responsibility to take care of their own mental health. As most of you watching probably know, my husband Devin is currently my caregiver. I am very grateful that we do have good communication. You know how with most marriage advice, they say if you want to have good intimacy, that starts outside of the bedroom? I think the same is true for caregiving. A good caregiving relationship is going to be beyond just the caregiving role. If there's not good communication, odds are one or both people are going to feel overwhelmed. Obviously, communication isn't the only factor, but I do think that that is a huge factor, if not the biggest factor. Even during times where Devin and I have had outside stresses, we still had good communication, so we still felt valued by each other. If I don't say please and thank you every time I use the restroom, for example, he still knows that I appreciate him. I think that because he doesn't coerce me, I naturally say please and thank you at least several times a day. Him not expecting anything in return naturally makes me feel appreciation. I know that may not be the case for every person in every situation, but I do think that that could generally be true for a lot of people. A caregiver can physically be putting in a lot of effort, but if they don't have the sacrificial attitude of Jesus, the person that they're caring for will likely feel like a prisoner. Remember, just like the caregiver can experience stress, so can the person they're caring for. We are human beings too. I heard a parent of a child with SMA say something, and I just thought it was so impactful that I want to share it. She says that she expects her daughter to be gracious, but not grateful for her care. Now, you may have this visceral reaction and say, well, shouldn't the daughter be both? That would be pretty entitled if she's not grateful, right? Let's define our terms. Dictionary.com defines it this way. Graciousness is the quality or state of being benevolent, courteous, and kind. Whereas gratefulness is a warm and deep appreciation for kindness received, gratitude, or thankfulness. Now, on surface level, both of those definitions, you might think, well, those both sound okay. What's the big deal? Here's a question that I think is important to ask that I think will help put this into perspective. Would this be something that a non-disabled person would ordinarily be grateful to another person for? If you don't have a disability, are you grateful to another person to eat, use the restroom, shower, get dressed? Now, I'm not necessarily talking about somebody financially meeting those needs for you. I'm talking about being grateful for the neurons that are required to physically complete these tasks. From a Christian perspective, we should be thankful to God for our physical needs being met, even for the neurons to complete those tasks. God is the one that allows that to happen. Every breath in our lungs, even if it's assisted by a machine, is by God's grace. Whether your body has the ability to complete activities of daily living tasks independently or not, God is still the one that ordains it. He's the one that makes it happen if you are performing it or if another person is assisting you. When we demand that a disabled person be grateful to another finite human being for their basic needs being met, that, I believe, is a misplacement of where the gratefulness should be directed to. Additionally, focusing all the gratefulness onto the caregiver can make the person receiving care feel small or inferior to the caregiver and to other people in general. It creates this unequal power differential in the relationship. When gratefulness is directed at God, He, rightfully so, deserves all the praise. Now, if you are not a believer, I'm not really sure what to tell you in regards to this, because I believe disability and caregiving are inherently spiritual. Actually, there's nothing in life that has no spiritual significance. The spiritual realm is more real than the physical. Regardless of our level of dependence on others, we all depend on Jesus Christ for salvation. All of us, definitely including me, have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And that is why we all need a Savior. Only Jesus is able to be that Savior because He is the only one that is sinless, and He's the only one that was able to pay the price of our sin. Praise be to God that He chose to come down from heaven, die on a cross, rise again on the third day, conquer death, all of that on our behalf so that we could be saved. For anyone that truly repents, truly turns away from their sin, and asks forgiveness through Jesus, you will be saved. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that video was edifying to you. If it was, be sure to check out my other content that will appear shortly on your screen here. And a huge thank you to my supporters. You guys really do bless this channel tremendously, and God bless you all.
The video you just saw was made by fallible Christians.
Although we diligently seek to represent the God of the Bible accurately, please understand that we are still being sanctified.
For absolute truth, please refer to the Bible.